America will get its first sounding of the public mood with elections in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City this week. That is the public mood in the Trump administration era. Trump 2, can Republicans win without Trump on the ballot? And how would a victory by socialist Zoran Mamdani, what would that mean for the Democratic Party's future? Plus, anti-Semitism is finding support on the political right as rifts emerge in the MAGA movement.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome, everybody, to Potomac Watch, our daily podcast for Wall Street Journal opinion. I'm Paul Gigot, and today I want to welcome our new columnist, Matt Continetti. Matt will write about politics for us after years of writing for a variety of publications and writing a well-received history of modern American conservatism. Welcome, Matt. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the elections this week. What has struck you so far about the races for governor? Let's start in Virginia and New Jersey. Anything in particular that surprised you?
Well, I guess what surprised me so far is a lack of surprise. So far, the races are trending pretty much as you would expect. New Jersey and Virginia, fairly blue states. They also tend to vote against the party that has the presidency. In that case, that means that the Democrats would have a good night. I guess I'd be looking more closely at New Jersey tomorrow night. Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican candidate, very skilled campaigner. He kind of surprised, or more than kind of surprised, spectators 4 years ago when he came close to unseating the incumbent. Now it's an open race. But otherwise, I think what these races show is the power of partisanship, especially in an off-year environment.
Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, a clear favorite, likely to win. The race to watch there will be, I think, the race for Attorney General, where Jason Miyares, the Republican, is running for re-election. He can do that in Virginia, unlike the governor, Glenn Youngkin, who can't run for re-election, but Miyares is running for re-election. And his opponent, Jay Jones, made a real misstep when some of his texts or emails recommending violence against a political opponent came to light. So Miyares may be able to pull it back, and that's important for 4 years from now, because presumably he'd be the heir apparent as a governor's candidate.
That's right. And as you know, Paul, there was some argument within the Virginia GOP about whether Miyares should run this year and whether the
Right.
nomination should go to Winsome Earl-Sears, who's running against Spanberger. I think Miyares, if he emerges as the victor tomorrow, he's the only Republican actually leading in the polls, according to public polling and polling averages right now across the three major elections tomorrow. If he does pull it out, then I think he made the right decision to vote for another term as Attorney General. In a state, Virginia, that's the legacy of Thomas Jefferson and Jefferson's fear and suspicion of executive power. He wanted to limit the governorship of Virginia to one term. We're still living with it.
In New Jersey, what's interesting to me anyway is that the issue debate has in some respects been dominated by the challenger, Jack Ciattarelli, in two important ways. One is electricity prices, and energy prices, which have really come to the fore and become a real problem for many of New Jersey residents because they spiked even compared to the rest of the region. And Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, has been on defense on that against Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican. She's said in response, she's going to freeze energy prices, electricity prices on day one when she comes in, which of course is nonsense economics. I mean, you're going to freeze prices. Then what are you going to do? As energy supplies don't expand because you can't actually have supply meet demand, it makes no sense, but that's how she's playing defense. The other issue is taxes. I mean, New Jersey is one of the most heavily taxed states in the United States. And Cheryl has been on defense on that. What Cheryl's been doing in response is running against Ciattarelli as 100% MAGA man, all for Trump. That's her campaign, essentially. That, and she was a Navy helicopter pilot.
Yeah, Trump isn't on the ballot that Republicans may regret after tomorrow night, but he's certainly foremost in Democratic imaginations, and he's appearing in ads across the board, and not just in New Jersey, but in Virginia. And of course, Zoran Mamdani has been raising the specter of Trump as he's campaigning in New York. Just one comment on the energy prices. They're also showing up in the Virginia race, where the growth of data centers in Loudoun County, not far from where I live in Northern Virginia, is causing a lot of NIMBYism and a lot of concerns about the connection between the energy demands of data centers and rising electricity prices. I think those concerns are unwarranted when you actually look at the data. Nonetheless, it's turning into a powerful issue, I think, across the board, but particularly in Virginia. And it's helping Spanberger. The most important thing to be in politics, in my view, is the candidate of change when people are unhappy, and Americans haven't been happy for a very long time. So that means if you're the change candidate, you have a built-in advantage. That helps Citarelli. The
Right.
New Jersey has had Democratic governors now for 2 terms. It's very rare to get a 3rd term for a party. But in Virginia, Winsome Earl Sears is in effect campaigning for Glenn Youngkin's 2nd term in a Democratic state where the anti-Trump electorate is powered up and ready for change. That helps Spanberger.
It's interesting point about electricity prices. I hadn't thought that they were working with Spanberger. I mean, the Glenn Youngkin, the governor, has been boasting about all those data centers coming into the states. They do bring jobs. They do bring tax revenue. But politically cutting somewhat against the GOP. That's interesting. I think it's the opposite in New Jersey. But Democrats have been trying to turn the tables on electricity prices and blaming Trump for the big, beautiful bill and the end of subsidies to solar and wind power under Governor Phil Murphy being a big part of his agenda. And some of these projects have been canceled. But that was long before this big, beautiful bill, which isn't even taking place yet. The subsidies are still flowing, so you can't blame them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the regulations, too, that so many Democrats and green energy enthusiasts put on power expansion when that involves non-renewables, I think also affect electricity prices in ways that are hurting Americans.
Let's turn to the New York City mayor's race, which I have to say is the most interesting race, at least since maybe Rudy Giuliani's race many, many years ago, when he beat David Dinkins. Zoran Mamdani has a big lead, though that's been closing as Andrew Cuomo, the former Democratic governor who's now running as an independent, has gained in the polls. And New York City, unique political environment, much to the left of the rest of the country, except for California, parts of Massachusetts, maybe Oregon, or Ann Arbor. But at least as a general political environment. So it's hard to draw lessons nationally, but what do you make of the Mamdani rise, and what does it tell us about where the Democratic Party is?
Well, I think the first thing Mamdani's rise tells us about the Democratic Party is that it's in the midst of an identity crisis. You've had a bevy of reports from different Democratic-aligned firms in recent weeks about which direction the Democrats should go in. Some arguing for the mobilization strategy to get all those progressives out there. Others saying what I happen to agree with, which is that the Democrats are too far to the left culturally, and they need to rein in kind of the cultural progressivism of their party if they're going to stand a chance to win. To the extent that Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill have done that, then it's helped them. But Mamdani in particular is not a Democrat. As Andrew Cuomo has been reminding people, he's a Democratic socialist who ran for the Democratic nomination, and because of the unique circumstances of that primary fight, emerged unexpectedly. I think what Mamdani shows is that there's a great appetite for kind of social media savvy candidates. He shares a similarity with one of his mentors, if you can call her that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has really kind of risen to the top of the Democratic Party through her Instagram lives and her kind of clever social media memes. Mamdani has done the same thing. Unfortunately for New York City, those social media memes are obscuring a really poor policy agenda, one that is a fantasy to begin with, whether you're talking about rent freezes or government-run grocery stores or free and fast buses. By the way, I love how he has to include the fast on that. It's not enough for the socialists to say that buses will be free. They're going to be fast, too.
As a New York resident who commutes every morning, I can tell you that they are not going to be fast.
No, I think that we can guarantee that as well. And I think the rent will continue to go up. He's a 34-year-old. He has no real political or governing experience, and he's the front runner to be the mayor of America's largest city. So the question is why? And I think there we have the unique conditions of New York politics to thank. When you look at Mamdani's coalition, it's driven by a lot of young, very progressive voters, single voters. They make up what I like to call the barista proletariat. These are people who are kind of overschooled, but they find themselves kind of treading water economically, and they don't have very good professional prospects. They're living in New York City, where you do need a lot of money to live comfortably. And so they're turning to everything they learned in their left-wing colleges, and that's the socialist ideology. He combines that with classic ethnic New York politics. And I've been fascinated to see Mamdani really drive hard his Muslim identity and his South Asian identity as we've seen Cuomo creep up in the polls. I mean, releasing ads in Arabic, that speech on Islamophobia that he gave, where he seems to have told a fib about his relative who he claims was looked at suspiciously after 9/11 because of her Muslim identity. That kind of coalition where you have immigrant politics with an identity politics component combined with kind of these highly educated young professional socialists, very hard to replicate on a national scale, or indeed really anywhere outside America's major metros.
Yeah, I don't think that coalition travels.
No.
And yet, if he wins, it could have, and I think arguably will have, a very big effect on New York State politics, because that you mentioned AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is from Queens, and she's contemplating a run for Senate or a run for president in 2028. The Senate run would be for the seat that Chuck Schumer holds if he decides to run again. Some people think he won't run again, but that's something that everybody knows she's thinking about. And then Governor Kathy Hochul is running for reelection in 2026, and she is maybe having a primary contest against her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, who I think will get a burst of enthusiasm and energy if Mamdani wins, and will put Hochul in a really fascinating governing situation, because in the whole coming out of Mamdani would take office on January 1st. Let's say he comes in and says, well, my issue agenda has been validated in a big way by the voters. Kathy Hochul, you need to get behind my 2 percentage point increase on New York City taxes and my big corporate tax increase. And by the way, let's expand rent control and so much more that he wants to do. And does she go left with him or not?
Right. Hochul has never been what I would call a profile in political courage. So as we saw with her endorsement of Mamdani and her appearance at a pro-Mamdani rally recently, I think she is going to try to make the most of the voters that Mamdani is bringing into politics. I think that will leave her vulnerable not only to a potential primary challenge, but of course to Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is running as for the Republican nomination for New York governor next year. Stefanik already showing, I think, considerable strength. No one who knows Elise Stefanik doubts her political chops. I think that's going to be a very competitive race next year, surprisingly so to many. But what it reveals is that Mamdani's victory, while a boon to the young socialists in the Democratic Party who really want to convert the traditional moderate, center-left Democratic Party into a vehicle for socialist politics, will be problematic in the extreme for the national Democratic Party. We already have President Trump threatening to withhold funds to send more ICE agents into New York City if Mamdani wins. I think many Republicans on the national scale are looking to Mamdani as a potential foil, someone they can point to as he flails with his socialist politics as a cautionary tale for the rest of the country. Unfortunately, New Yorkers are going to be the main victim of this because they're going to have to suffer through the Mamdani mayoralty. And in particular, of course, the Jewish New Yorkers. It's the largest Jewish population in the United States, and it's going to be potentially run by a very young mayor whose positions on Israel can only be described, I think, as anti-Semitic. Some of the comments he's made connecting New York police officers to the IDF, his support for boycott, divest sanctions on Israel, his slander that Israel committed genocide against the Palestinians during the October 7th war. All this amounts to a very hostile environment, I think, for New York's Jews, in addition to a hostile environment for New York's businessmen, large and small. I mean, let's not forget his proposal to have these government-run grocery stores threaten the bodega owners in New York, and bodegas are part of the fun of New York. But isn't that always the case with socialists? They just want to take away our fun.
And they do a good job of it. And no, it's absolutely right. The bodegas are the small shopkeepers. You go in there and you buy a quick something or other, and you buy a lottery ticket if you're into that. You can still get a newspaper there, print, believe it or not. I can get one on Lexington Avenue on Sundays, after I go to church, and it's, you can still do that in parts of Manhattan. But those are the shops that will be hurt if they try to set up a lot of these grocery stores. Not Whole Foods, okay, which has the upper echelon clientele. It's going to be fascinating. Elise Stefanik, I think, is going to announce perhaps as early as next week her campaign. I think she'll let the dust settle from this week, but I know she's gearing up for it. And she'll have an interesting shot, I think, a very interesting campaign running against Kathy Hochul. So let's turn, before we go here, last item, to the fight on the political right that's emerging. I know you've been following, and it's about anti-Semitism emerging in some of the MAGA ranks. The latest brawl over this was set off by Tucker Carlson, who on his podcast last week had Nick Fuentes, the self-styled Hitler fanboy, admirer of Joseph Stalin, who talks constantly about the perfidy of global Jewry and the Jews. And Tucker was criticized for what was clearly a softball interview, if you listen to it, and in some ranks, and then got an astonishing, to my mind, apologia from Kevin Roberts, the president of the Venerable Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank. And his argument was, well, I don't agree with Fuentes, but we shouldn't cancel him or Tucker Carlson. They shouldn't be run out of polite political society. What is going on here?
It is head scratching, isn't it? I think a few things. The first is that the assassination of Charlie Kirk has created a vacuum that activists are trying to fill in order to shape the direction of young conservatives. There was a whole argument, of course, over Charlie Kirk's support for Israel. He was a steadfast supporter of Israel. He was a vowed opponent of anti-Semitism, and now he's gone. He was taken from the right. And so that means then that venomous figures like Fuentes And the people who would amplify his message, like Tucker Carlson, see this as an opportunity to kind of increase their market share, so to speak, among young men in particular on the right. The second thing that's happening is the fight for the future of the Republican Party. And I think 2028 politics weighs heavily in here. You know, when you look at what Tucker Carlson has been saying, his opposition to President Trump's Mideast policy, his opposition to the Operation Midnight Hammer, the strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities, which Tucker Carlson said would cause a third world war with hundreds of thousands of Americans' deaths.
Right.
Of course, that didn't happen at all. Carlson suggesting links between Trump and Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein. He's trying to push the Republican Party away from its decades-long support for the state of Israel and opposition to anti-Semitism. And he thinks he can do this because President Trump is a lame duck. He is not going to run for a third term. And the heir apparent to the MAGA movement, J.D. Vance, is someone who's very close to Carlson. In fact, owes Tucker Carlson really his political career, whether that was platforming J.D. Vance ahead of his entry into the Ohio Senate primary in 22, or arguing for Vance's inclusion as vice president to the exclusion of Marco Rubio in 2024. When you look at who Tucker Carlson is going after, the figures he calls Christian Zionists, which represents essentially the entirety of the Republican Party, if not most of the country. He specifically names figures like Ted Cruz, Mike Huckabee. These are stalwart Trump allies. So what we have here in microcosm is an effort to shift the Republican Party and its potential carrier, its potential presidential frontrunner in 2028 in an anti-Israel direction, not just anti-Israel in policy. Of course, that's never the case. It's anti-Israel to include American Jews and their allies who advocate for Israel and who oppose anti-Semitism here at home as well.
It's fascinating, if also in many respects disconcerting to watch this. One of the startling things that the Roberts comments have revealed here is the sense that, as he put it, we shouldn't have any enemies to the right. Our job is to attack the left because they're this enormous threat. And we shouldn't attack anybody on the right, no matter how far they wade into the fever swamps. And it's interesting that comes from Roberts, who represents an institution that, of course, has never been in those fever swamps, and puts that reputation in jeopardy. But also, it differs so much from the legacy of the political right that William F. Buckley Jr. represented and others, where they drew clear lines, most famously against the John Birch Society, but also in the 1990s with Buckley's famous essay, Is Pat Buchanan an Anti-Semite? And that actually you can find on YouTube a Tucker Carlson interview in which he supports Buckley's view that, in fact, Pat Buchanan was an anti-Semite, where now Carlson has totally switched. But I guess my question is, has that taboo gone away on the right? And just how widespread is this view among young men?
Well, it's hard to gauge how widespread. Polls show various responses. In fact, just recently I was looking at polling about the white working class, of course, of all age cohorts. And it's funny, even though the white working class Trump supporters are more skeptical of aid to Ukraine, say, as you might expect, they remain steadfast supporters of Israel. I mean, this is in every poll you see, including polls of young self-identified MAGA voters that the publication I founded, the Washington Free Beacon, conducted not so long ago. And yet, the second you go online and poll, as I'm sure you've seen, the anti-Semitism can just be vicious. And the transgressive approach, kind of the the joy with which some of these young men define norms. We saw recently in that text, the group chat of the New York Young Republicans, just some awful sentiments. There's clearly something going on here. It seems to be a lost generation of young men who find purpose and meaning in the nihilism they encounter online. And that needs to be stopped. And it's precisely why movements have guardrails. This whole no enemies to the right, that ignores the lessons of history. I mean, American conservatism only became successful and viable and influential in the Republican Party once these guardrails were laid down, beginning with William F. Buckley Jr., but enforced throughout, including by conservative heroes like Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan. During the mid-20th century, it was the left that had this philosophy. No enemies to the left is the way that liberals believed. And of course, that delegitimized the very label liberal in American politics for decades. Why would the right want to follow the left down this road? It just beggars the imagination. I think it's politically disastrous, and it's a moral stain if the conservative movement allows voices like Carlson's and Fuentes to dominate the debate and to have fellow travelers or useful idiots like Kevin Roberts somehow legitimize their position.
Do you think that Roberts could lose his job over this? Will the board perhaps pull the plug on him? He's had several missteps like this. And then the question in my mind is, what about J.D. Vance? Is he going to have to actually stand up here and show where he really is? Because, as you say, he owes a lot to Tucker Carlson politically. But as Carlson drifts further into unacceptable beliefs, Vance, if he wants to win in 2028, I think is going to have to disavow that.
You would have to assume. I mean, the opposition ads are writing themselves. I mean, J.D. Vance is very quick on his feet. He's a slick character, but it's going to be very hard, I think, to disassociate himself with his friend Tucker Carlson if he doesn't draw some clear lines fast. As for Roberts, there, of course, was a lot of chatter in the Beltway community over the weekend about whether his job was in jeopardy. It seems to be safe for now. He has reassigned a lower level staffer on whom he's pinning the blame for his apologetic video. And he then released a statement on X explaining how he disagreed with Nick Fuentes' anti-Semitism. That may be enough. But I think 2028 is the key here, Paul. And what it suggests to me is this Republican fight in 28 is not going to be a coronation of J.D. Vance. It is true that right now he is far ahead in the polls of Republican primary voters in 28. He, of course, has access to the Trump money machine. Mm-hmm. But when you think about Senator Ted Cruz's reaction to the Roberts video and to the Carlson interview at the meeting that last week of the Republican Jewish Coalition, that sounded like a presidential candidate. And we, of course, know that Senator Cruz has presidential ambitions. He's run for it before. In fact, he came in second in 2016.
And as he will tell you many times, I'm the only person who actually beat Donald Trump.
There you go. Right. Exactly. Right. And so on the other end of the spectrum, too, you don't know whether a Tulsi Gabbard candidacy in 2028 or a Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene candidacy in 2028 is a possibility. And let's not forget that President Trump himself always refers to the dynamic duo when he's asked about 2028. He does say, oh, yes, we have a wonderful vice president. But then he says, but Marco Rubio is the best Secretary of State ever. So the events of the past week, and it made me think, 2028 is going to be extremely interesting on both sides of the aisle.
I think that teaser is a good way to end this because I think you're absolutely right. And as for Ted Cruz, I have reason to believe that he realizes that there's a vulnerability here and an opportunity in taking on the anti-Semitic right, and that who knows? He may well run. I suspect he will. All right, Matthew Continetti, thanks so much, Matt. We really appreciate it. Look forward to having you, reading you in our pages, but also having you on our other broadcasts. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
And thanks to everyone for listening. We are here every day on Potomac Watch.